Yeah. So the floor is yours. You can share your experience and yeah.
All right, cool. I guess hi everyone. I'm Michael Markman. I am the head of design at ShapesXR. ShapesXR is a virtual and augmented reality design and prototyping tool. A bit about myself. I've been working in the XR industry now for about 10 years. I've worked on a variety of different games, tools, experiences, interactive art installations, and one of the fundamental questions I've spent my career trying to answer is how do you prototype for a spatial medium? Like, how do you design experiences that are meant to be um, used in a virtual or augmented reality headset? And I think there's a lot of fundamental differences, especially for brainstorming, especially for ideation, that are the reason we built ShapesXR was an answer to these questions, right? And one of our fundamental philosophies is that you should, as soon as possible,
Only
you
like
want to
Maricel.
be ideating and thinking
No.
in the medium that you're building
Ah,
for, right? So a lot of people might start with just like a piece of paper, but we like to start in ShapesXR itself. And so I'll tell you a bit more about ShapesXR. We'll go to a new space. This is Shapes. Shapes is basically, our goal is to kind of be like the AR, VR Figma, or the Figma for 3D, right? So it's always like to start in a cafe or a house. And one of the fundamental things I like to do whenever I start brainstorming, right? Whenever I start working, is let's say I have a concept, an idea, and I know that maybe I'm going to build something for the living room, right? Maybe I'm going to build an XR experience that will take place in my living room. And I usually like to start with sort of like really basic shapes. Just a quick question. Are there going to be any participants asking questions, or are we just recording this and this will be sent out later?
yeah. So right now we will be recording this session, and then when the
Okay.
sessions come, yeah, then we can do it later.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, I'll just keep talking. So like, what I think the best way, I can talk about the principles of designing in AR VR, but I'd rather just, I think the best thing I can do is just show you how it works. And so what
Right,
we'll
right.
do is yeah. So I think what we'll do is we'll just start designing an XR experience. I like using spheres in a lot of my designs. I think they work really well in 3D. And I always like to give them one thing you always want to do is think about your materials that you're going to be using and how visible they're going to be. But that might be a little early for this part of the process, but I'm just going to give them a little bit of metalness and roughness. Maybe give them roughness. There we go. You guys should be able to admit people if people are trying to join. Admit all. And maybe you guys don't have the permissions. Who should I make? I can make someone else a host so you guys can add people in. What
Yeah,
account, what name should I make the host?
yeah. You can make me for now.
Okay, let's do that. All right, there we go. Okay, perfect. All right, and we'll continue on here. So we have a bunch of different tools and shapes. One of them is the drawing tool. This one's really, really fun to start with for prototyping. So what we'll do is first let's kind of maybe come up with an idea. So maybe it's a living room based. Let's do something really simple, like an augmented reality. It's going to be an augmented reality media player, and so, we'll have our user is going to be sitting on the couch. And so let's set the viewpoint. So we'll put our person on the couch. Make them nice and comfortable. I can always teleport into my viewpoint and see if it's comfortable. I think this is nice. Maybe we'll even move it over a little closer, maybe more centered, maybe more like ready. I think the target for the design is going to be the TV, right? I like using existing paradigms, but I guess so maybe they're watching this TV. So let's give that. We use our shape tool at this point, and we'll start doing something with the TV. Let me use a regular cube, and I'll change the color. And so these are the tools we have in shapes and that you can use. And then I'm going to have it snapped over, to right from the corner. There we go. So I'm going to start here, start with this TV. And I think the way, and I like to use the physical objects in the environment as a sort of like anchoring point. And so what we'll do here is maybe we'll have the TV is going to kind of like, something's going to come out of the TV and come here. So we now I'm going to start playing with frames. And frames are like kind of like pages or pages in your notebook, slides in a PowerPoint, right? Or artboards in Figma. And so maybe we'll have something out here. So this comes here. That'll animate in. And now let's think about, let's just put a placeholder object in there for now. So we'll just have some sort of interesting cube is going to be the thing that comes out. And actually we'll do add a frame here. Really small. This is the animation tools and shapes make it really fun to like prototype certain things. So we're here. And then we'll there. Delete this. So my experience. Now what I'm doing is I'm kind of just thinking through the experience. So I look at the TV, this cube comes out of it, turns into something. And maybe this is going to be kind of the origin point for my experience. Maybe this is where my menu will come out. And so maybe I'll grab, one of the cool things about Shapes is that you can bring in Figma files and Figma frames. So like these are Figma designs. We're not going to get too specific with this prototype, but we'll just pretend like, we'll have some sort of menu that comes in. Maybe it's a chat-based menu. Maybe it's an AI. Maybe it's an AI assistant that lives in my thing. So maybe we'll have a UI and we'll have a 3D element to ground it against. So now we're kind of already starting our storyboard, right? And this becomes important when we want to explain stuff to developers. I look over here, I look at my TV, cube comes out, and it gives me a little menu. Maybe this is or maybe even this is my remote control. One thing I've always really liked about XR and about spatial design is that you have the user's entire body to play with. So one example here is for example, in Shapes, the menu is actually pinned to your hand. And we allow for that kind of prototyping in our tool. One thing that I can do is, for example, I can have this menu actually be attached to the user's right hand. And the way that'll work is I'll move it over, I'll place it here. When I press play, I now have a menu on my hand. And we'll make it a little smaller. Yeah, it feels nice. We can even center it on the controller. A little higher. There we go. Look at that. That's perfect. But yes, that right there is going to be my hand menu. One thing you might be considering for this hackathon is whether or not you want to design for hands or controllers. And this is something you can do in Shapes. If you go to the prototyping settings, you can change the input mode to be hands. And so when I press here and I push to hands, I now have a menu on my hands. And this is really nice because I think hand tracking is the future for a lot of these devices. It's going to be a combination of eyes and hands. And so it's always really nice to be able to just, like if I was designing something for a hackathon, I'd almost certainly do hand tracking with it. And, again, what's important about design and prototyping is like getting an idea of like scale, position, and how things feel. Right? Like how things feel ergonomically is uniquely important in XR, right? Like if this is too big, it'll make me feel uncomfortable. It might make me feel nauseous. If it's too small, I won't be able to tap it with my hand, right? And its position on my hand, is this a comfortable position for me to keep my hand in, or will my arm get tired? Right? These are all considerations that you need to be thinking about when designing for your user, right? Like I think this is one of the fundamental principles of any design discipline is thinking about your audience or thinking about your user, right? Like human-centered design is, is a term that's often bandied about. And in practice, what that means to me is you want to try, your job as a designer is empathy, or is to embody the person who is going to be using your application or your experience. And so when I talk about the importance of designing in the medium is because it helps you build that empathy. Like if I can actually experience and feel what my UI looks and feels like from my user's perspective, I'm able to empathize with the user that I'm building this for. I'm able to see if they put, like, or they keep their hand up, or they, will their hand get tired? Will this be a comfortable interface for them to experience? Right? Like it's, that is what we do as designers on a fundamental level. Hackathon, not hackathon. This is just what, the fundamentals of design. So we have our little hand menu. We have a 3D element. We're haven't really, we're not going to get too detailed in this prototype. We're just going to keep talking about, the process of ideation, right? So let's say this is our menu. This is something I brought in from Figma. I'm sure a lot of the people watching this all are really familiar with Figma. There's really good guides on our website of how to bring in Figma files and just know that it's possible. So I think this is, one thing we can get into now is talk about interaction in different states, right? Like you're not building a static piece of artwork, you're building an interactive experience for this hackathon, whether it's a game or anything like that, right? Like I think the AR, VR, I think application design is defined by interactivity. And we have a system for that in Shapes. The first thing I'm going to do is, imagine some light interactions and figure out, what do I want to actually build here. I think we'll start with, I think we want to do maybe some left, something with these left and right buttons. And let's create a couple of cylinders. We're going to use these as our buttons. Put that there, and let's duplicate it and put it over here. And let's just do that for each button, just like that. And do is like that. And I'll give them really semi-transparent. Really, they're really just hit targets. And just like that, and then we'll make sure that each of them this is important, make sure that they are also attached to the right hand. And so now we have our little menu. And so let's try a couple of things. Let's make another frame where this cube is moved over to the left. And let's make another frame where this cube is over to the right. I'll come back here. What I'll do is I'm going to start linking up some interactivity. And so I want to do on touch. Let's go to the frame where this is moved to the left, which we know is our next frame. And then let's do the same thing for this one, except on touch, we're going to go to frame. And I want to do, when I'm in frame 4, if I press to the right again, I'm on touch, frame, and I'm going to go back a frame. So that way, go to the left. And for this one, we're going to do the same thing. Touch, or not the actual thing, on touch, go to frame 3. So that this will be a way to reset. The wrong object, so I can actually just change it like this. So let's see if it works. This is the beauty of doing stuff in Shapes, is that you can immediately test if your thing works. So we'll go left, right. Oh, we didn't have an interaction. Okay, there we go. And like that, we messed up one interaction, which is, we will change the object to be this one. So now everything should work perfectly. Right. Boom. And you see how fast it is to just start immediately prototyping interactions. And you can really start to get a feel for whatever it is that you are building. Okay, and this makes it really easy to explain to a developer, what it is that you want them to build. How do you want it to be animated? How do you want it to look and feel? So that's fun. We're here. All right, so let's keep going. Let's maybe add some more interactions. Let's do something around saving. I think if I am going to save, make another frame over here. I think saving will maybe put this cube will actually, let's have it merge with this tape. Right, like there isn't really a purpose here at the moment. I'm just kind of, what a design might look like. Maybe it'll turn into like Change its material. These are all the different properties that you have control over, right? This is how you can indicate state to your user. So what we'll do, and I want it to happen from wherever any of the states. So what I'll do is I'm going to add an interaction to this guy. Interaction on touch. Go to frame 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy that. And I'm going to paste the interaction. I'm going to paste the interaction. And here we actually don't need the interaction. What we'll do is, we'll have it do the same thing, except we will have it go to frame 3. And so here it goes to frame 6, frame 6, frame 6. So now, when I go to prototype, I can move left and right. And either way, it will always activated. We can always hit no matter what. Hand tracking is not a meta issue. Tracking detection. Go. That's what's happening. I can go left and right. At any moment, I can have a savable cube. These little animations. Right. So now what I'm doing is I'm building. This is a fun. I want to have a fun interactive prototype, and that's what I'm just building here in Shapes. Boom, 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 boom. Right. And I'm doing this all at proper scale. I'm doing it all with like proper context, with real sense of spatial awareness. And again, I'm thinking about the ergonomics of the interaction. How will this actually feel to my user? All of these, really important factors that like you can't. It looks easy because it's a lot easier to do this in the headset than to like do it in Unity and then try dialing it in, and then you're moving it around, and then things are breaking, and it's just a nightmare. Like it's much easier to make mistakes in Shapes because it's a lot faster. You're just gonna get a better result, and you're just gonna catch things fast. I don't know if I love this position of the menu, and so what I'll do is I'll actually I think it's a little, I think it's maybe a little too far away from the controller. So what we'll do is we can actually maybe I think it might be better if it's on the inside of the hand. So what I'll do is I'll just move the hand, and then I'll go back. So prototyping it now. Everything is easy peasy. Now more ergonomic, right? These are ergonomics, scale, distance, interactivity. These are the things that you are prototyping for. These are your primitives. These are the tools by which you manipulate the world. Doesn't feel very comfortable, and so it's mode. Here. Uh, let's see, how are we doing on time? Restart it. Bit of an error. Or any questions so far?
Right now, I think. Okay, so just a curious question from my side. Like, can we use voiceovers like with interactions in like in this XR?
What was the question?
Yeah, so my question was, can we use voiceovers? Like we can add an event and then we can add a voiceover to the, like the interactions. Did you get my point?
So yeah, like you want to be able to add audio voiceovers. Yes, yeah, no, you can totally do that in Shapes. So we allow for upload of, I can actually show you exactly how to do that. So what you would do is you would go to your ShapesXR dashboard, And let me find I have some 11 labs conversations. Yeah, so for example, what I'll do is I'll go to my files, and over here I have MP3 file, free. So we'll grab one of my various 11 labs voiceovers. I'll upload it in. So you can see my 11 labs voiceover is uploading. It's now over here as an MP3 file. Now we'll go over to this tab and let's set up our prototype so that it activates it. All right, cool. So let's see, we have our little prototype, and maybe we'll have right here, we will have a voiceover play. What I'll do is I go to my interactions and I'll go on frame enter, play a sound. And that sound is going to be this 11 labs file. Or, yeah, we'll have it be this one here. Confirm that, and we're not going to have it stop. We're just going to have it play all the way through. And what's interesting, you can actually choose an emitter. So I can have it spatialize from that cube, which is really cool. And so when I press play, it's now playing. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it is. And it's actually moving the audio. So right now I'm hearing it from here, and now I'm hearing it from my left ear. That's really interesting because it'll continue to play. So you can actually put in spatial voiceovers. Does that answer the question? I don't know if you can. Are you able to hear the sound?
Yeah, we
Oh,
able to
maybe.
hear that.
Hey Inga, it's WeWork Flatiron.
Yeah, there we
We
go.
have a 2-hour day pass available with private booth access included.
Go back to this.
So it's like that.
Wow, that is
Annoying.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are recording this, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me exit. Sorry, 1 sec. I gotta have a
Weird
thing.
Hear myself too much. Okay, cool. I want to show you this Duolingo space. This was made as a prototype for a previous hackathon. This is a good example of the kind of stuff you can make in Shapes with you when you combine all of these systems. This is a right. Okay, there we go. Have aligned it better, but this is so you can see here that someone was making a Duolingo XR. What they have is these frame looping. Grab the carrot, it attaches to my hand, and I can place it over here. I have a little button. Better. Okay. Dog. Over here. And again, this is all imported from Figma or created in Blender, but then prototyped in. So incorrect interaction. The animations is kind of a scale in, scale out. And this is the correct interaction. Continue. All right, and this is all built in ShapesXR. All right, this is what this looks like. It's just 15 frames, and honestly, this was built before our animation system. You could probably do this in like 4 or 5 frames these days. Newer updated shapes. Right. Yeah, that's interactivity, grabbing, prototyping. I don't know how the frames work. We have these different tools to import files. And these are, for example, these are 3D models imported from library here. Library is over here in my file. Yeah, when I uploaded that audio file, but I can also upload, 3D files, images, pretty much anything. Well, working on before. Zoom. Model. I have some weird issues with my internet today. I'm noticing this. Yeah, I guess we're just having some issues with my internet. Anyway, yeah, we also have a library of just like included devices and models, and you can have, types, little spice to your scenes. Yeah, stuff like that. So you can upload your own models, or you can just use the ones that we've included. There's sharing features that I can't really show without additional people, but you guys can discover those as you go. Already talked about viewpoints, your frame menu, it's just an extension of this menu that you have here. I can turn pass through on and off depending on if I'm doing AR or VR. So for example, this is mixed reality. Hi everyone, it's me. I can also turn that, again, mute, unmute. We have different environments that you can choose from, which will change the way your scene is lit. Important. I'm gonna mess this one up too much because it's an example. We have a large library of samples over here you can check out, and it gives you a better idea of like how stuff works in shapes. Yeah, I think that's more or less it for the demo portion. And stop sharing. Here. Yeah, that's kind of the guide to how to prototype using shapes. If you have any questions, I can answer those, and let me know if anything else you want me to talk about.
Oh, that was like really great, and yeah, and other participants as well. Like if you have, like if you want to access the ShapesXR the license, so for like if you want to like collaborate with your team on ShapesXR, you will get the license. So you can just put your email ID on our Discord server, so you will get it. Okay. And yeah, Michael, just like as you have the experience of this, with the design, okay, I just wanted to ask you about like, as our, like hackathon is based on the problem solving the real problem. Okay. So we are not making any games or anything like that, but we are focusing on solving the real issues. Okay. So I just wanted to like get your like ideas on how to, build something which are really helpful. Okay, so because end of the day, if something is not helpful, then it's of no use, right? That's what we feel. So like in the healthcare or in education, how we can, like from your design perspective, I just wanted to understand more about that.
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of this comes from research and empathy, right? It's researching and identifying a problem, right? That's kind of where all of you are going to start your projects. You're all going to figure out, what is the problem that I want to solve, and you want to dive deep. You want to make sure it's an actual problem, and you want to you probably won't have time to interview people, but that's always, when you're in real life, this is how you really find out and dial in and like tune into users' problems is by talking to them. But beyond that, once you're actually focused on, once you really spend a lot of time identifying a problem you want to solve, and then because it's an XR hackathon, I would say like, try to focus on where XR is actually useful, right? Like, is it a problem, if it's an informational density issue, like in medical spaces, or is it 3D data sets, which again, relevant for medical stuff, right? Like, are you, what is it that is unique about the medium of XR that that it is useful to solve your problem, right? Like, is it for collaboration? Is it for viewing a complex 3D model? Like, these are things where XR really excels. You don't want to just use XR for the sake of XR. Like, you want to, again, I think, you're right where, again, if, really focus in on the problem. Okay, like your design is, you can think of the conversation, you can always think of design as a conversation. And, the opening sentence is, beginning of that conversation is really all about problem definition. It's a conversation with your actual users or potential users about the problem. And then once you understand that, your design becomes an answer to the various questions that their problem brings up. Like, oh, my problem is that I can't do this. Well, in my design, you do it this way, this way, this way, and right. And then when you are actually crafting the visuals and interactions of your design, you're essentially following the structure of a conversation, right? Like in the beginning, they do this, and then their problem is solved. And maybe I ask, you can check if the problem is solved, and then the other way, if it's not, you keep iterating, right? And so it's this continuous process of iteration. So it's one is problem definition and understanding, and then two is rapid iteration to make sure that the problem is, that your solution addresses the problem. Your first solution will almost never be complete. Right? It's important that you test and prototype whatever it is that you come up with first against the problem, against a strong problem definition. Ideally against a user or a tester, right? Test, 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 test. And then at a certain point, you diverge, and then you converge, and then you polish, and then you're making the sword sharper and sharper until it can. My problem is that I don't have a sharp enough sword to slice through a blade of grass. Well, if you make the sword sharp enough, it solves the problem. Yeah, that was a good question. I hope my answer is sufficient.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, others, if you have any questions, you can ask. Aditya, if you have any questions, you can ask.
No, no, thank you for this time. This was my first meet. I think I have learned all these new things. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Okay, so yeah, that was it, I think. And if you have any questions, you
Great.
can put it in our Discord as well. So we will ask, like, if we have any questions, we can later on also schedule. Okay, so there's nothing to care about. Okay, and let me just start. Okay, let me just start my sharing the screen. Okay. I hope my screen is visible. Hello.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So these are our sponsors. Okay. 11 Labs is like which Michael has already shown the how to we use the voiceovers so that we can implement in our XR solutions. So that was a great opportunity. And yeah, AWE is also our sponsor and ShapesXR as our partners. Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much, Michael, for giving us your valuable time and for a great workshop that has introduced us with ShapesXR and how we can build XR solutions around it. Okay, so it's a great
Yeah, no problem at all.
yeah, it's a great prototyping tool, and yeah, everybody just if you are not into the coding part right now, so we will really encourage you to test your idea by building the prototype with ShapesXR first, and then you can like refine your ideas more with your team, yeah, and you can do some great stuff. Okay,
Yeah. All right. Cheers, y'all. Thank you for your time.
thank you, Michael. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye,
You
bye,
too.
everybody. Bye.